Good evening. Welcome to the Wyndham-Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. The date is Wednesday, November 15th, 2023. It is 6:30 p.m. and we are in the Wyndham High School auditorium. May I have a roll call, please?
Christina Small.
Here.
Jessica Bridges. Jenny Butler.
Here.
Jody Carroll.
Here.
Caitlin Downs.
Here.
Marge Gavoni. Joe Kellner. Here. Shar Jewell.
Here.
Mike McClellan.
Here.
Lillian Nugent.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No, we don't have any adjustments to the agenda tonight.
Okay, now is the time for public input. The purpose of public comment is to provide an opportunity to address the board on matters specific to our schools and educational matters. All other comments beyond that scope are not appropriate for this meeting. The board will listen carefully to all members of the public but will not respond. Speakers are expected to follow rules of common decency and decorum. Interrupting any speaker or board member during commentary is not allowed. We ask that all speakers address the board, not the audience. Each person will be permitted to address the board one time during public comment with a maximum speaking time of 3 minutes. Sharing time with another speaker is not permitted. I will alert the speaker at the 3-minute mark. If speakers do not complete their comments within the allotted 3 minutes, they may submit a written statement to the board. Written statements are also accepted from those who do not wish to speak publicly. Requests for information or concerns that require further research will be noted and referred to the superintendent for further action if necessary. Discussion of matters involving individual students is not permitted during public comment due to the privacy, confidentiality, and due process rights of any RSU 14 student. Comments regarding any individual staff, either by name or specifically identifiable by position, are not permitted. If the comment continues, the mic will be turned off. Complaints about any district employee should follow the process outlined in Policy KEB, Public Complaints About School Personnel, and are not permitted during public comment. We ask that adults share their first and last name and the town they reside in. Students are only required to share their first name. Thank you for joining us this evening. We look forward to hearing from you. Seeing none, I will close public comment. Next, I would like to welcome Joe Kellner to the board. He was elected last Tuesday, and he is a representative from Wyndham. Congratulations. Next up is the superintendent's report.
Sure. Wow, that is very hot, CJ. Perfect. A couple things just want to share tonight. Actually, CJ, if you could bring me down just a little bit more, would be great. Perfect. First of all, if you've not had a chance, Wyndham High School Drama is putting on the play Spam-A-Lot. It ran last weekend and then will conclude this upcoming weekend. So there'll be shows Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday afternoon for a matinee. If you've not had the opportunity ever to come and visit or go to one of the Wyndham High School productions, you're in for an absolute treat when you do come. So that is upcoming. Just also want to shout out and give a congratulations to all of our fall athletes. Just thank them for their outstanding participation. Also want to recognize both our boys and girls cross-country teams for winning the sportsmanship banner for this past fall. They will add, and I can't remember how many that cross-country has earned, but add to an amazing wall in the Wyndham High School gym of all the different sportsmanship banners that have been won by all the Wyndham High School teams over the years. Next week, we will be sending out via Parent Square the NWA results from last spring. I know there's been a few questions about when those will actually be coming. Our amazing technology group has been working throughout the last couple of weeks on a way to push those out electronically so that families can have them. So we'll be pushing them out probably middle of next week so that families can have those. Also, just want to add here, construction committee will be meeting again on November 30th, and we'll be up and running and moving forward with the project that was passed at the last referendum. Also, we'll be including in the next week or so, actually not next week or so, next month or so, 3 different real estate closings, one for 61 Wyndham Center Road, one for 77 Wyndham Center Road, which is immediately adjacent, and then an acre of land with the Presumpscot River Land Trust. So that's going to be coming up here pretty quick. And I'll just wish with everyone, next week's a short week. Students will be on a Monday and Tuesday, and then they head off for Thanksgiving break, and just want to wish everyone happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you. Next up is board roundtable. Does anybody have anything to share? I want to add to Mr. Howell's accolades for athletes in the district, excusing any duplicates, but the field hockey team. The middle school field hockey team went undefeated this year, and just a terrific accomplishment. Athletes from Raymond and from Wyndham, 2 new coaches on board there and a full team, so looking to continue to grow that program in the district. So I would be remiss if I didn't mention that. I said a couple things tonight. Just thinking back on our communication goal and our goals this year for academic opportunities to understand academic intervention in the district based on NWEA testing, as well as the iReady testing that in some cases is coming out today, depending on, and in a few weeks ago in some of the schools. I was thinking about reflecting on a couple of connections that I had made with administrators around opportunities, and I just wanted to share those to see if we can continue to collaborate as we work toward our election of new leadership on the board in the next couple of meetings, but also just some ideas that we can continue to share to meet those communication goals specifically. So one of them was around discussions around kind of 3 areas for engagement in the school environments. One of them was around finding opportunities and asking for opportunities for student engagement as appropriate with the administrators. We did that last year at the high school level, and really asking our administrators in our site visits to allow us in that civic-minded environment for those students to connect with board members as appropriate. Teacher workshops or roundtable connections, so any educators that do want to engage with board members in around a set topic, maybe quarterly, that if we had the opportunity, any board members with administrators, that you would share those opportunities for the full team to participate in those. And another idea that was bounced around was project highlights, of course. You know, hey, we're doing this Title I night, we're doing this night around agricultural, education, et cetera. If there were any unique instructional events, that we would share those with the full team, just so that we all kind of had the opportunity to engage in those. So those are a few ideas that I had around opportunities to meet that first goal for communication, and I'd be open to hearing anybody else's ideas firstly. So, and I look forward to site visits in the future, so hopefully to do more of those this year. Wanted to just ask if it was okay. I know we received some emails from the public today. This is a bit of an odd request, but just want to check with the team to see if you'd be okay if I read an email from a member of the public. I know, Christina, you and I talked about that. It's odd, it's not common practice, and certainly we couldn't do that for all of the communications that we received, but there was an email that we received that I thought sort of captured some of the sentiment, at least from some of the Raymond residents after the election, or pardon me, the vote from last week around the bill, and if everyone's okay with it, I wanted to share it. And I'm not sharing it because there's with any purpose. Certainly our work on this project is going to move forward, and I hope that we'll have a vote to move this project forward for bonds tonight. But I just think it's important to just recognize some of the sentiments as a team, and that we've had some concerns from residents, and if you're okay, I'm going to go ahead and read that email. The member notes that they can't make it in person tonight, just unable to make some arrangements. They had asked someone to read tonight, but found it difficult just because of the nature of the how nervous they were.
She wanted to provide some feedback in regards to the agenda item tonight, number 8, the middle school election referendum results. This individual lives in Raymond. Her family has 2 young children at Raymond Elementary, and she notes that they chose the school not necessarily because it was new or otherwise, but that she, for the small enrollment, personal attention to having their children, a name to every person in the building. They pay taxes and live in Raymond, and to support the RSU, which as a town, they voted to stay a member of after Mr. Howell and the RSU made it clear there were not any plans to close JSMS building at that time. She notes that had there been discussions and feels that many other voters and taxpayers in Raymond and families would have voted against the staying with the RSU if there was a chance that that had been clearer. Further, in 2021, when the concept came up to consider combining Raymond and Wyndham middle schools and the public hearings were held, she notes that she spoke up against the idea along with many others. The superintendent did acknowledge Raymond residents were not in favor, that the Wyndham Eagle article in public hearings noted that the majority of those spoke in the meetings were in favor of keeping JSMS open, that there were straw polls that were taken also supported the idea of keeping the building open at the time. The residents of Raymond, herself included, she notes were not given a chance, that she felt the number of individuals spoke up clearly, and this part is really talking about the vote that the select board in Raymond chose not to go out to referendum based on the timing and some of that. She's frustrated that she wasn't given a chance, and some of the other taxpayers and voters in Raymond, all of them, were not given a chance to vote. Just a week ago, 2 years after we were told there were not plans to close JSMS and were supposedly heard, we were asked to vote on approving the funding for this combined middle school. So there's some frustration about the process. Raymond voters voted against the measure last week. This should show the school board that when given a chance to have our voices heard, that Raymond taxpayers did speak up. She's talked a little bit about her children and her concerns about the long bus rides. And essentially, the sentiment continues with the fact that she was concerned about Wyndham having the majority in the vote, and even though the district totals in Raymond and Wyndham did pass, but that there was a minority. She's concerned that the voice of the Raymond voters has not been heard through the process. She doesn't feel as though she's been represented, and she's asking regarding the resolution tonight, that in good faith, that the board does not consider this as something that represents the Raymond voters. I think I'll leave it at that, but her last point is that the equity in education for all students would be outweighed at a disadvantage for long bus rides, longer days for those students, some of the impacts that aren't measurable for some of those students that are further away. And so forgiving the length of that, I just wanted to share the sentiment. And from my perspective, I would say I do feel disappointed in the idea that all Raymond voters did have a chance to vote and voted as a majority to not join. But that the school board, this teams in the past, the select board, and other individuals that were elected did speak on behalf of the Raymond voters. I do feel disappointed about that, but I'm in full support of the build project as it is tonight. So I just want to at least do what I think is right there and share some sentiments. And I think that email really did summarize most of the feedback that I got, in addition to the cost of the project, as a reason why they voted no for as a Raymond taxpayer. And that's all I had tonight, unless anyone had any questions.
Go ahead, Mike.
How about that? Okay. I just became aware someone sent me an email, and I won't read it because literally it's the same email. And I guess they said they sent it to me early. I checked my emails at 5 o'clock and didn't see this, but it's on my email now. So just someone with very similar, pretty much right down the list in terms of the bus ride and the process. And I kind of assume, I was just going to read it and kind of reserve my thoughts for when we get to the conversation later. So anyway.
Anyone else? Go ahead, Shar.
Thank you. Leave it to the new guy to teach the old girl how to work the microphone. Should know how to do it by now. So I do have some notes and thoughts to cover this evening. As Jody stated, the voting in Raymond was definitely gave us an impression on how Raymond voters feel about the combined middle school. What I can say is that it's unfortunate that 2 years ago we didn't have the opportunity to be able to put it to a vote of Raymond voters. And so, we're so far into the project at this point that there really is no way to back out of it. There is no way to change course. And so I share concerns that a lot of the parents have with the amount of time kids are going to be on buses potentially. Certainly 10-year-olds riding with 18-year-olds on a bus for even just an hour a day is too much. Unless, of course, we had bus monitors on every bus. So I've been blasting job opportunities for the RSU on social media. I intend to keep doing that in the future because we need some help. We understand that there's issues on buses from time to time, and the bus drivers can't operate the bus safely and police kids. So we need some help there. So anyway. So definitely transportation is one of the larger issues, but there's plenty of time to figure it out, to create a plan that's going to work best. And that could be changing start times, that could be buying extra buses, that could be any number of resolutions, but we will definitely work on it. I have confidence in our administration that they will take this seriously and the concerns of the parents, because I'm sure they share them as well. I mean, administration doesn't want a bunch of tired, cranky kids in school either. So it's definitely something that will be a focus. Another thing that people have brought up in person through email is they feel like this was a backdoor, hidden decision. It couldn't be further from the truth. It was advertised through email, social media blasts, newspaper articles, RSU and town websites, the Raymond Select Board, and the Wyndham Town Council meetings. I understand that some people are new to town, so they weren't even aware this was going on and didn't have the opportunity to be aware because they are new to town. So that's unfortunate, but I don't know what else we could have done other than go to door. There also was never a guarantee that buildings currently in use would remain open into eternity. And some people are kind of intimating that they thought Jordan Small would be open basically forever. There was never a guarantee. It was not in our view when we started down this road of a new middle school, but it cropped up through the process. Things change over time. There's no way that administration or the board at the time were considering leaving. The RSU knew that Jordan Small would remain open. It isn't realistic to expect that they knew it would close or remain open forever, for that matter. So, this conspiracy theory that the board and administration knew that it was going to be closed and essentially kept it hidden is not the truth. And so it's just, a very difficult decision process to be making as a board member, not only as a school board member, but the select board wrestled with this decision as well. So here we are today. There is no way to go back and change it. And I just want to make sure that people are clear that that is not an option. So the three of us that sit here on the Raymond board, or the school board, that are Raymond residents, we are not here just to represent Raymond. We are supposed to represent all students in the RSU. As board members, we also have a fiduciary responsibility to the taxpayers of Wyndham and Raymond to make sound financial decisions. Changing gears a little bit, I'm looking forward to Christine Hessler's curriculum update this evening. I do think that we should have more proactive and transparent discussions on student academic achievement. I think that has lost focus in the last few years. I'm looking forward to a renewed priority of academics over other activities students spend time on during the school day. Recent testing and learning results highlight a large gap in education for a lot of students. The board, administration, and staff need to focus on what we're going to do about it. So changing gears again, last year the school board had monthly meetings with high school students, so this is kind of joining in with what Jody was talking about. I found those meetings extremely valuable, not only as a board member, but also as a parent of a high school student, because it validated some of the things that my own child was telling me. So I would like to expand those into the middle school, be able to have those opportunities to talk with kids and get their perspectives. I think is valuable, because they're the ones that walk the walk and talk the talk, along with staff and administration. I also think that based on the meeting that the joint public meeting we had with the Raymond Select Board a couple weeks ago was extremely valuable and a great learning experience, and I think that it was very beneficial to be able to talk through difficult situations and have a back and forth dialogue. You know, the way that our board meetings are set up is that we can't have a back and forth dialogue, which is not only frustrating for the public at times, but it's also frustrating for board members. I would love to be able to talk to people and talk about issues and hash things out. So I think we should do some public workshop meetings, pick like a topic per meeting, and who shows up, and we talk about it. And obviously no formal board action would be taken at these meetings, but it would be an opportunity to hash things out. Only through open discourse will we move forward for the best interest of all students, staff, and administration. And that brings me to the last several years. We've had a great divide in our community. It's been probably some of the most stressful years that our civilization has ever been through. This board is no exception. Not only do we need to be transparent to the public as a board, but to each other as well. Too many assumptions are made and not enough discussion of tough topics. I know in my case, and others, I believe, in my opinion, we don't bother to talk things out because we've already assumed that we've made up our minds. I look forward to creating a collaborative relationship with my fellow board members as we work through this school year. And that is it for me tonight. Thanks.
Go ahead.
Okay. I want to say thanks to all the candidates who ran for school board. It can be really hard, especially when there are verbal attacks made on candidates, whether they are valid or not. One of the candidates that did not win did say, and this is a quote, "I hope this community can come together for the greater good to provide all the students of RSU 14 with the education they deserve." I truly hope this will happen. The second thing, and I will definitely echo what Mr. Howell said about Spam-A-Lot. I saw the show Friday night when it opened, right here on the stage. And it was absolutely fabulous. The costumes were amazing. I had to go back and find my soundtrack to the Broadway show, listen to that all weekend, and find the movie that it was based on, Monty Python's and the Holy Grail. There we go. And the costumes in the show were just like the costumes in the movie. I was so impressed anyway. So please get a chance to come see the show this weekend, Friday and Saturday at 7, Sunday at 2. Dr. Nickerson is the musical director. Mr. Rob Juergens is the regular director, and the choreography was done by Vanessa Balin. They did a great job. The crew is fabulous. A show doesn't happen without the crew. So great job all around, and yeah, catch the show.
Anyone else?
Hi, okay. Just in response to what Jody stated earlier, I was one of those students who actually last year talked to the school board for the first time, and that was a really eye-opening experience for me and many other students. I don't think a lot of students know how to contact school board members or are scared. So just being in that school environment and just kind of having that personal conversation, I think it is really valuable. And I would really want more of those personally. And I know a lot of students wanted actually more time to do it, and I think we got kind of cut off short by doing it during advisory. So I just wanted to put that out there. I also have some recent school news. Social Justice League and Key Club are both organizing a Thanksgiving drive for the Wyndham Food Pantry. They're also in collaboration with various other clubs and honor societies, so if you just wanted to know that. Student Council is having a snowman raffle fundraiser, and I am pretty sure they have over $300 worth of goodies in there, so that is pretty good. It's like $1 per raffle. An update on the e-hall pass that I stated in a previous meeting, students seem pretty good with it. I think there was some complaining in the beginning, but that's just students being students. So, but like there hasn't been any problems with it, and I think it actually has been working on like making sure people get in on time, like just stay in the bathroom for 5 minutes instead of walking around for 10 minutes around the school. So I think that has been improving the academic life in the school as well. Let's see, additionally, civil rights, the Civil Rights Eagle mural is starting, so you can start to see that in the closed calf. I'm in civil rights and we are starting to paint that, so just keep your eye out for that. And lastly, I just want to encourage everyone to watch Spam-A-Lot. The students and the staff are just so passionate about it, and it just gets me excited seeing my friends be so happy just during the play. So, yeah.
Are we all set? Okay, moving on to committee reports. Finance?
So Finance did meet this evening. We talked about the upcoming expenditures for the new middle school in depth and how that's going to work out with bonding and payment plans and all of that stuff. We also talked about just basic preliminary things of the budget year starting up. It's hard to believe that we're going to be starting it again already, although it's my third year. I should be used to it now. And talking about what, just in general terms, what's going on this year and what's needed and what the expectations are. And we will be meeting again next month.
Marge isn't here to do a facilities update. Do you have anything to share?
I guess I'm how to take that. Facilities will be getting together in December. We actually have some projects that Bill is going to be bringing forward. One is the electrical upgrade to Raymond Elementary School to make sure that we have enough power for the HVAC upgrade that's going to take place. We have some bids that are going to need to go out soon, so we'll be coming forward with that. In addition, we want to give Facilities Committee an update on where we are with the Manchester Fields project. And then in addition, many of the facilities members are also part of the construction committee and looking at some long-term plans for that for things that are going to be coming up in the very near future.
Policy met on Monday and at some point the week prior, but I don't have my calendar with me. We are working through IJJL, making good progress. I will give kudos to Jody for going through every public comment that we received in regards to IJJ to make sure that we at least discussed them. And we're taking a good hard look at the selection criteria right now, and we're continuing to meet every week, really trying to get this done. So that's where we're at. We're meeting again next week. Curriculum, Jess is not here to give an update, but we're going to hear Jess, Jenny, did you want to go?
We're meeting on Monday.
Thank you. Technology.
So although technology hasn't met again, I wanted to just drop a couple notes in. Hang on now. Sorry, I have my computer here. I didn't print it before I left. So I wanted to just continue the conversation about the district's energy and professional development on artificial intelligence. It's something that's going to take a lot of time, a lot of knowledge, and a fair amount of work in our view to continue to learn about how we'll handle this in the long and short future. So I'll just note that administrators, educators, and the tech committee team has had opportunities to participate in the artificial intelligence professional development. It's varied and intense, and some of them are a little bit foreign to me as not being a legacy educator, but I wanted to just share that with the board to let you know that we're continuing that work. So the Maine Association of School Libraries did a session yesterday called What Educators Need to Know. The materials that were provided were significantly robust as far as a credentialed resource for our educators and for the board as it applies in the future to take a look at and how that can work. I alluded to the fact that there's many layers to this as it relates to bias and what platforms to use and software licensing and how students use it and ethics and a number of things. So that work continues. I'll summarize these sessions once we finish the fourth session. The one that we just did the other day was really getting into utilization for instructional practices. And there's another one in that four-part series. So I will continue to do that, but just know that that team is working on how that technology may best be used to improve the effect size of instructional strategies for teachers. And as it relates to the board work, as I said in our last meeting, I'll just repeat, we will start with an acceptable use policy for AI, and then as needed in the future, we would go from there. So that's all I had for technology.
Thank you. Adult Ed?
We have no report because we haven't met.
Okay, and for vocational, again, Marge isn't here. She did forward the PATH minutes to all of us. So we've seen those. If anybody in the public has a burning desire to know what happened, email the board. I'd be happy to pass them along. Next up, report of the secretary. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the minutes of the November 1st, 2023 meeting.
Second.
Board discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Okay. Okay, next is Curriculum Committee Update by Ms. Christine Hessler.
I'm assuming, yeah, you want me on this here. So thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you. Yes. Why? Oh, okay. Okay, is that better? Okay, thank you. I also just wanted to follow up. The curriculum committee is going to meet Monday afternoon. We had a couple of conflicts, and so we are actually going to have representation from kindergarten, first, second, and third grade coming to share what's happening in their pieces, in their instruction. And then I'll also be giving the members of the board that are on the committee, before we start with our teachers, an update on Mystery Science that you supported last year. I just wanted you to actually see the stuff and talk you through those pieces. So very excited to get together Monday afternoon. So tonight I'm here to give an update on the ELA and Social Studies committees that we had last year. So Maine adopted new standards. Even this is during COVID, if you look at the dates. The state of Maine, due to legislation, needs to keep on their schedule. Mr. Howell and I quickly decided that this was not work we were going to engage in during COVID when we were hybrid and out of school and other pieces. So we formed 2 committees last year that met year long. We had an ELA committee and we had a Social Studies committee. These were represented from teachers K through 12 across the RSU. We had a web page with all of our findings and all of the work that is there posted. And so here are the new standards, and there's a little story behind all of them, and this is what I'm going to take you through. So in ELA, there are now 4 huge domains, and these are actually listed in order. Vocabulary being the first one. Nope, go back. Sorry, Beth. And then we have speaking and listening. We have reading, and we have writing. So those are our 4 huge domains that are the overarching standards for the Maine learning results. In social studies, it's civics and government, personal finance and economics, geography and history. We implemented those standards. Right when they came in, there was not a lot of change in those areas, and we'll get to some of the nuances as we go further. So the committee work, you might wonder, what in the world do they do for a full year? And so I kind of bulleted this process. I could talk for an hour on each of these things, honestly. And we have curated everything we've done. Members of our committee can look at that. I'm meeting now with teachers. They have full access to look at our notes, our agendas. So the first thing we do with committee members is the introduction of the new Maine learning results. We talk about the why behind any of the shifts that are going to be made. We do a crosswalk of the standards, the old ones versus the new ones that are coming and are adopted. We also gather grade level units that are being taught right now. We also gather grade level resources. What do we have to teach these pieces? We go through a process to prioritize the standards. For example, in ELA, if you look at the number of standards, it is completely overwhelming and there is no absolute way every grade level can do every single thing that's listed. And so our educators have broken them down into standards for mastery at each grade level, standards for understanding, and then standards for exposure, so that we're able to weave those in. The other part we do is we do a K-12 map of the content and skills to ensure that when students progress through the RSU that they have skills needed that build upon each other. And then we work on an implementation plan for staff. We provide professional development opportunities, and we also update the curriculum committee. So my poor friends on that committee keep hearing about this over and over, but it's okay. So implementation of the work is where we are right now. In English language arts, our report cards do not reflect the new standards. That is going in next year. We felt very strongly this is a huge area, and English language arts encompasses every content area. And so the committee came up with a great plan where I meet with every grade level with some of our resources and our teachers. And we're meeting 3 times a year. We are almost done phase 1. Each trimester I meet with teachers for an hour after school, and we walk through one chunk of the new ELA standards. We break down each domain. So this fall it was all about reading. So we focused on one big area. We've mapped out what that looks like for them. We've given them resources. We have talked about core instruction, and then we have also made grids of tier 1 interventions in the classroom so it's systemic across the RSU. We also provide professional development for staff for their own personal toolbox. We've provided them with a text for their own personal journey. And we have opportunities for new learning. So the goal when we finish is when they leave in June, they know the new standards, they have some tricks up their sleeves, they've played with some of it if they've wished, and they will feel really comfortable. The other option is me standing in front of them for 2 hours before we open and say, hey, here are your new standards, go forth and have fun. So We have had amazing discussions at every grade level. We have had teachers just requesting some, can I make this shift? Do you have this material yet? Yep, have it, play with it, go for it. Getting really comfortable. We also have 21 staff members doing a year-long course in letters, which is an early literacy training. I told Mr. Howell that this is probably, I'm doing it as well, it is kicking my butt. It is a graduate, Beth is also in it. It really is a graduate course, 2 of them actually, on early literacy and the science of reading. Our educators range from administrators, ed techs, interventionists, classroom teachers, who are just blown away by the information, and they're feeling really confident. We will continue that trend, and when we get to budget and my annual report, I'll also share more information about that with you. And so what we're trying to do is really help teachers understand they are giving us feedback, so they will have their own documents to go from for next year, and they have an opportunity to play with it. So here's the parts what I already spoke about as little. K-1 teachers, K-2 teachers actually have a book called Shifting the Balance. K-2, if any board members love to get their brains working with us a little bit, let me know. It is the science of reading approach, which is aligned with the national standards and the Maine state standards. It is explicit phonics and phonemic awareness programming. It provides us with a systematic approach in instruction and classroom interventions, so that we're actually intervening in the classroom, in Title I, and then following in special education if needed. So we're providing training and materials for classroom instruction. You're going to hear a lot about what's called UFly, which we'll get to share with you a little bit later. And then I spoke about the letters training, that cohort of 21 individuals. So today, this afternoon, from 1 to 4, we did our 3-hour we meet every 4 weeks when we do our trainings, and we meet with the facilitator from letters, and it just blows our mind away what we're able to do. It's done really, really well. Okay. When we move up to shifting the balance, then we move to grades 3 to 5 and the middle level, when we took a look at this piece. These are the parts that we're really honed in on. So it's just not our phonemic awareness and our phonics. We're making some shifts to help teachers explicitly build background knowledge, recommitting to vocabulary and morphology, word reading, instruction, and fluency focus, new things to do with independent text. Jordan Small Middle School this week or last week just started using Newsella. It's nonfiction articles, current events. There's also a social studies and science component, which is aligned to the state learning results. So imagine you want to teach a science unit and you have kids in your classroom that are at 4 different reading levels. This will actually take the content, and you can choose the reading level and assign it to the student. So they're able to engage in that content building at their reading level. So we are using that at Jordan Small. We just tested it out. And one of our areas of weaknesses is that in the middle level, we don't do a lot with, we should be doing more with nonfiction. There's not a lot of nonfiction out there that's readable for middle schools, and so that's our key. So that's a big focus for us. We're also engaged in working with an application called REMO, which stands for Read More. Here is where students in their independent reading can respond to their reading, and they also can assign standards for evidence, and you can look at it over a course of a couple of years. So all those important things they're doing, it's the application of those strategies that will be going in. Windham High School is doing some ELA mapping across their courses. They're also working on, which I know you'll hear a little bit about later, they're also working with the ELA standards and how that impacts our vocational students and where is the crosswalk. So that we're in their vocational program, what standards are they hitting that they can be caused and they can be used for credit for graduation. So a lot of really big work being done with that. So our concentration, this is a great graphic. Word recognition and language comprehension equals reading comprehension. So we are unpacking what does word recognition mean. That is the lower part of Scarborough's rope. My friends here in the front row know that that's phonics, phonemic awareness. Then we get into language comprehension. It's our second tier, and having the pieces of the puzzle to make sure that our students are very solid in their reading comprehension. So that's our work here. This is a great visual. I know it's probably tiny on your paper, but just so you know, this is our map of what we're doing. So if I am a K1, 2 teacher, or at my students where they are, I am looking at phonological awareness, I'm looking at decoding, and I'm focusing on sight recognition. So these are the building blocks. The premise behind the rope is all of the strands need to be strong so that they are blended together in order to achieve being a skilled reader. So you'll hear more about this in the future, but just wanted to share that graphic with you. So our implementation of social studies, our standards have been in place. We have added Wabanaki studies to each grade level. We are adding personal finance to each grade span. We do have that course at the high school, but those are the parts that our teachers are working through. We are connecting and building on background knowledge for ELA and social studies. And at the elementary level, there's a balance between science and social studies. We have prioritized with units of study in science, which I'll be sharing with the committee, which units they're doing, and then which units they're attending to in social studies. And again, we've mapped it out so that we ensure that kids have a systemic pathway as they go through for science and social studies. But in elementary, that is the reality. They're either teaching science or they're teaching social studies. So you can't expect them to teach 7 units of each. It just does not happen. So we've done a lot of work on that piece to guide staff. At the middle school and high school level, we will be realigning the units to have consistent scope between Jordan Small, Wyndham Middle, and eventually Manchester with grade 5. We are updating our curriculum guides, and we're adding new resources to the middle level, the new ZLA and the new social studies. And we're also diving into the Wabanaki study modules created by the Maine Department of Education in conjunction with the tribe members. We've been waiting a long time for that work. I think one of the things that we've heard often in the news is we're not teaching it enough, but there are new resources out there. So now they're coming forward and they have the full blessing of the tribe, which is really nice because I think one of the things our educators are very aware of, they do not want to offend anyone or any person. And so it's really nice to finally have some materials. We've also made a connection with the Abbey Museum up in Bar Harbor and trying to help them spread their information and wealth of resources across the state. So Maine curriculum leaders are working with them to try to get some more programming out all over the state, which would be nice. Wyndham High School, their courses have been updated using the Maine Learning Results. They are adding electives in social studies in the interest of students. I know Pete Small is working with our new tech integrator at the high school. He's going to assist with his sophomores, I believe. They're going to build a unit on the Constitution Day for the elementary level so that when it is Constitution Day next year in September, the high schoolers are going to use some technology, some video, and they're going to introduce Constitution Day to our littles across the RSU. So that's where we are. I'm happy to answer any questions. In the Poor Curriculum Committee, yes, you're going to hear more later, but.
So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome.
I do have a question when it comes to the ELA part.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things that I've noticed, not only for myself, but other folks around me at work and in my personal life, is that they're reading less and less all the time. Mm-hmm. So my question is kind of twofold. What are the current challenges that people don't read as much as they used to? And then in the future, I anticipate we'll probably have more of that, more opportunity for people to talk to a computer, which will then type the written word, and then have things read to them so they don't have to read it. So how do you see this part of education changing in light of that probability?
It's huge. Kids would rather be on their phones, and they'll tell you that. And so what I'm noticing across the RSU is teachers the two sitting right here, they're reading picture books to kids, and they are magical because they are engaging and they're using sounds and they're getting kids hooked on books. As kids get older, it gets a little bit tougher. Our teachers are doing all kinds of really cool things. They're looking at tech sets. So we're going to be studying the rainforest in science. So we're going to build a tech set and come up with all kinds of different books around the rainforest. And somebody may love animals and somebody may love plants. But they're working really hard at making connections with kids and then trying to find them the books so that they can do that piece. But you're right, it's a societal issue. I love to read, my girls love to read, but there are many kids who would rather be on their phone. And so it's a problem that we're looking at. It's an incentive piece. Our educators are well aware of it. I give them huge kudos for them finding books that are exciting and they match with kids. I do think at the middle level, right now, with what I was so impressed with Newzello, is there's content that some kids can't access because they're just not interested or they can't read it. And so now to have the teacher have the opportunity to assign a level to a student, the same content, but maybe a different way that that student can understand, I think is going to be a game changer, honestly. And the same thing with writing. What is the purpose of our writing? Why do we need, and I think a lot of the things that we talk with students about is they don't realize that I think it's 84% of all jobs include writing. You have to be able to write. And then they're like, really? Yes. And so taking real world applications and having conversations with kids, sometimes gets them to think a little differently. You're not going to be writing a narrative all over your life. You're going to need to write for different audiences. I ended up subbing at Jordan Skamal the other day, and which is great. I love the kids. But we were talking about something. There was lunch, and my laptop was open, and one of the kids is like, "Oh, what are you working on?" I'm like, "Oh, I'm working on a report for the board, and I have to do this writing." And so we were saying, I'm like, "So here's all these numbers, but then I have to talk about the why behind it." So we had this really cool conversation, and I said, "It's just like what you're doing in this art classroom is." You've just finished this piece, and now you're going to write about it and explain and analyze it. So we had a really nice conversation. So I don't know if that fully answers what we need, but.
Go ahead. I don't have any.
I think this is probably more than we thought we were going to see tonight in terms of detail. I love detail, you know me.
Sorry.
Now, it's good to know. It's important for us to know. My question is around what impact do you think this work will have on this year's results? So some have already come through, understanding the legs on this and the amount of time that you've put into preparing it. New instructional framework, looking at the complexity of some of this work. There's been other initiatives in schools with changing schedules, introducing new classes, wins, when will we see the impact of this work, in your view, on learning results through NWEA or iReady?
So I'm prepared when I come with the annual achievement report in December, whenever the magic date Chris gives me, to show you some classroom results. Because right now, if I'm thinking, I just worked with somebody yesterday, and here was a situation where students took iReady. There were a group of 5 students in the room that their phonics was really low. Teacher took the next step, said, I'm going to did the core phonics screener on them, found exactly where they needed to be, what their deficit was, and started them in that U-Fly program that I talked about. 3 weeks later, she had a pretest when they started. 3 weeks later, they had every word that they were doing. And she wrote a sticky and she said, this is like magic, it worked. So this is like a perfect little storm for us, where you have educators who are like, what do I need to do to help these kids? We finally have some tools in front of them that they're able to do, and we're seeing that classroom result. So I can't give you a magic 8-ball when we're gonna see a difference on NWEA, because they've changed the test again. And so when I come to see you, I'm going to explain to you the difference between the fall assessment and the spring assessment. I do like the spring one that we finally just got our results. We actually have it the state average, and I think you're going to be surprised and pleased where we are as the state average. For example, mathematics. So the average score or the proficiency is 1,500. The entire state is under that for math for middle school. So it's just not RSU 14. So we're going to look at those pieces. I wish I could tell you, I don't know. I'm in schools every day. I watch people doing their content, trying to do with their thing, and then I also see them dealing with behavior. And that's taking an awful lot of our way, and I'm glad that we're going to talk about SEL because that's a lot of the pieces of it. And that's unfortunately where we are right now. And I think that's an important piece. Until we can address some of these behaviors that some kids are coming to school with, then the learning happens and it's magical. And I think that that's where we are. But I'm excited to share with you in a couple weeks, here's what we've done, here's some evidence, because you want to know as a board, what we're doing, is it making a difference? And I'm going to show you some examples of where it's making a difference. I don't know how long it's going to take to show on the state because I have no control over what's on those questions or what it's done. But I can share with you where we are with everybody else who's around us. So.
When you give us the update on the scores, will you remind us how often the test has been changed?
Yes.
Because, as we know, you can't compare apples to oranges when the test changes and the rules change.
Yes, and I actually have a
Yeah,
one-pager and a three-pager if you really want to get into the statistical pieces. This is my 12th year, I think, Chris. We have not had a 3-year consistent state test since I have been here to look at trends. So I'm going to do my best. I'm going to share with you. I think the most important thing is every administrator, I've made like a table of their iReady data and then their NWA data for the fall. And they have 4 prompts they're gonna tell you. What are our bright spots? What do I notice? What do we need to improve upon? And what's their action plan at their building level based on the data that's in front of them? That's our important work. We can control the things we can control. And that's what we're gonna keep striving for. So, I'm sorry this was more in depth. I kind of missed that memo, Mrs. Burtonay, when you said to do an update.
Go ahead. Can I just ask one more thing?
Absolutely.
Can you, certainly there's a lot more than you've listed here, obviously, but do you have a sense of the intervention tools for, is it more software-based? You've highlighted a few of these tools.
Yep.
And maybe the impact on the instructional model. I mean, can you just
Yep.
give me a sense of
Perfect.
how those are playing together?
You are right, Jody. We have software tools. We have pathways for iReady where kiddos get assigned them based where they are. They can work through those independently. Some schools use it as a lab and kids go there and there's a teacher overseeing. Other places you go and there are interventions. Christina, I'm sure, is so sick of seeing letter tiles at primary school because she's down there. But you will see teachers working through phonemic awareness. They're mapping out words. They're using magnets. I have made so many letter trays, which I'm going to bring one next time, with magnets, and the kids are mapping words, and they're doing phonemes and graphemes, and they are using manipulatives so that brain gets connected. Those pathways get connected. So it is a great balance. And I'm super excited. We have finally found some pieces which we have been longing for mathematics. We had a huge grant this summer, which I'll talk about later, but we were able to purchase Do the Math, and our kids coming, they do their iReady math, and then they come in for this extra boost, and the kids are loving it. It was so successful this summer. So I finally feel like one of the things Mr. Howell and I worked on last year was if there's a skill deficit for a child and they need an intervention, what is it that we have? And that's what we're shoring up, and that's what we're working with our teachers with. So, and Jody, actually the number of ed techs and interventionists who reached out that said, can I please be in the letters training, I think speaks volumes of our staff and their commitment to do what's best for kids. So.
Any further questions? All right, thank you for your time tonight, and I know we're all looking forward to your annual achievement report coming
Your
up.
notebooks. Okay.
So
switch.
next up is our social emotional learning presentation with Christine Frost-Burtonay.
Thank you. Well, we actually have a team presenting tonight. So Beth Peavy and Sue Austin and Phil Rossetti and Christine and Becca and anyone else who would like to chime in on this. Christine just covered a number of acronyms. I heard UFly, I heard REMO, I heard ELA, News ELA. We do that a lot in education. This is another one. And it's probably going to sound very familiar to you because it's not really new. So regardless of when you went through school, pre-K right through post-secondary, you probably had elements of this woven throughout your entire schooling. So what is social emotional learning? What does that mean? And what does it look like here in RSU 14? So that's the focus tonight. And in your packets, you'll have information with 4 slides on each, and I hope you can read that, but we'll also walk through it up here. So I'm going to pass it off to Christine Hessler. So why SEL?
See what she just did there? I was already up here. So we talked a little bit, obviously, tonight about the academic piece, and I alluded to, in order to get to that piece, we need to have other things worked on. But it is a collaboration between academic, social, and environmental learning. Castle defines that as social and emotional learning, and it's an integral part of education and human development. I think when all of us started school, one of the first courses we had to take was human development, human growth and development, if anybody remembers that piece. And this talked a lot about of how humans develop and how they interact. One of the pieces that I found was really fascinating is that they've done some studies with employers. And employers really support SEL. 92% of surveyed executives say skills such as problem solving and communicating clearly are equally important as their technical skills. We've heard that with our, oh gosh, I'm losing my thought, the college and career readiness, the blocks before that, Chris, come on. Guiding principles, thank you. Sorry, it's been a really long day. The guiding principles that are the tenets for everything that we do. Clear and effective communicator, practical problem solver, all of those pieces are clearly important. They also cite that social and emotional skills are important to company success. And then there's this statistic which is really kind of looks a little strange, but 51% that human resources professionals say education systems have done little or nothing to help address the skills shortage. So are we actually attending to it? Do we need to attend to this more? I think it's safe to say when I look at PLCs, small groups of teachers, if I look at schools, if I'm over with Mr. Rossetti and we're in a department, if those people are interacting, problem solving, getting along, the work is outstanding. I think that's a really key piece that we have to do.
So I forgot to mention there's 26 members on the district SEL team, and they've been meeting for the last 4 years. They represent teachers, administrators, social workers, counselors, school psychologists, a number of us. Joining together from every school is represented. So that team comes together last year and this year quarterly to check in. How's it going? What's the work in your school look like? How can we share resources, support one another in this work? So this part 2 of the what is SEL, more than ever, as Christine was noting in her previous presentation, the things that get in the way of a child being able to access academics, right? So when they step off the bus, if there's trauma, food insecurity, something just happened that was upsetting, those things can get in the way of their ability to, when that math worksheet problem is presented and their minds are elsewhere. We all know this as adults. We feel this when we're distracted. It's really hard to focus. And so SEL, more than ever, is critical to supporting things that we've talked about a lot with you all as board members. Academic recovery, something that Christine will again delve even more deeply into with her annual achievement report. Mental well-being, we've talked about that certainly through COVID. That came up a lot. Community members brought that forward. You all brought that forward. What are we doing about the mental health needs of our students? And safety, as you know, we talk a lot about safety with you all. And so it's important to understand that when we think about what is SEL, SEL is for everyone, students and adults, children, young, old. It helps develop skills that will support one's success. I highlighted in bold-faced, underlined, the terms I think we need to understand when we think about what is SEL. It's about communicating effectively, setting goals, short and long-term goals, achieving one's goals, staying motivated, perseverance, making decisions that benefit me, things that will help me be healthy, grow as an individual, and also things that benefit my larger community. So who am I as part of a larger community is really important when we think about SEL. We also need to understand that SEL is based in research. There's a lot of research, global research, pre-K through adult. So hundreds of independent studies, meta-analyses have been done around SEL and what are the benefits of explicit social emotional learning instruction. Well, we know it leads to better academic performance, which is really important to understand, improved well-being. So a student's well-being, sense of self, who are they? Are they growing into a healthy individual? And safer schools. SEL is really critical to bringing families and community together. And so when we think about a school's efforts to design SEL and weave it into their programming, that's a really critical conversation with families. Families know how their child learns, what their child needs. And so that partnership with our families and our larger communities is really critical in this work. This infographic is from, as Christine mentioned, it's a national organization, the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning. And so a lot of research comes out of CASEL and a lot of resources. This helps you see, if you look at the outer circles, let's go with the outermost, it's about communities and having these aligned opportunities within our community. Wyndham has a great example I'm going to highlight. There's been a Wyndham Wellness Community group that's been coming together with fire and police and social services and school and all sorts of folks thinking about challenges like homelessness and food insecurity, social services, transportation challenges, needs of our elders in our community, et cetera. So communities thinking deeply, and do we have aligned services and supports? And then the next circle in is really looking at the work that we're doing with families and caregivers. Do we have authentic partnerships with our families? And schools, what are they doing to create these positive cultures, safe climates for all kids? What's the work that school leaders and educators are doing together as a team? Then in the classroom, what does it look like? So in classrooms, when we think about social emotional learning, we're really looking at these 5 areas. Helping a child develop a positive self-awareness, self-management skills, responsible decision-making, relationship skills, and social awareness. Again, that who am I relative to my larger community and group. So this gives you a little bit of a deeper dive into those 5 areas. I won't read them to you. And now I'm going to pass it back over to Christine. We're going to talk now. So we've done the why SEL and the what is SEL, goal setting, academic supports, et cetera. Now we're going to get into the benefits that we're going to see that direct connection to the academic benefit that you'll see if we're really meeting all these needs of kids.
So our benefits of SEL, we know that when students feel supported and they have relationships and opportunities to develop and practice social emotional skills across many contexts, academic learning accelerates. A little sidebar, I was up at States with my daughter running, and it was really cool to be standing in the crowd and watching the Wyndham boys and girls win their sportsmanship award. And I think that's a tribute to their coach and their program of how supportive they are of each other, academically, socially, emotionally. Those kids put it all on the line and did that, and yet did that with such grace that they were awarded that huge honor. And so we know that there are hundreds of studies involving more than 1 million students worldwide, just not in the United States, across pre-K to 12 that offer consistent evidence that SEL has a positive impact on students' academic achievement. You go into classrooms and you're watching kids and how they interact, and you're watching the teacher facilitate that piece. The learning is just expounded. I also think it's important to mention that it also builds increased student engagement. which we know then leads to improved academic performance. You as a board supported Mystery Science last year. You heard from our teachers who came forward and shared with you, here's a need that we have. We really want to do this hands-on stuff, but we have to buy it on our own, and it's just not organized. That's one tiny piece that you as a board help support, because through that work and through those materials and platform, you can go into a first grade class and watch kids build duck beaks and then try to figure out which animal is eating which piece. And you're listening to the conversations, they're completely engaged, and then they're then bringing in more content that you could ever imagine. And then you watch the teacher who masterfully really lets the conversation flow and asks probing questions, so that kids then came the next day with more information because they went home and asked mom and dad about that bird. So these are some of the really cool benefits of SEL. And so, oh, this is you, sorry.
Okay, couple more benefits, and then we'll move on to, you can hear specifics in RSU 14. Students who participate in SEL have higher levels of school functionings reflected by grades, test scores, attendance, and homework completion. And SEL interventions that address the 5 core competencies that we talked about earlier: self-management, self-awareness, social awareness, etc. There's an increased academic performance by 11 percentile points. So the data is showing us that there's real positive benefits. Again, when you look at this having been woven into a child's academic career, you're going to see that their learning is long-lasting learning. It's deep learning. It's not just, I learned it, I demonstrated my knowledge on the test, and then I kind of forgot it. But it's deep learning. So when they're able to focus on those academics because we've met those other needs, they're going to have a higher likelihood of having that long-lasting, deeper learning, with a 13 percentile point higher scoring than students who didn't participate in SEL instruction. So let's go from the big umbrella topics, the what and the why, to our strategic plan. So we are in year 3 of the board approved and community developed and educator developed strategic plan that guides our work. And we're going to laser in on core belief 5. We have 6 core beliefs, as you know, but this one really has a lot of elements of social emotional learning. And so strategies like identifying social emotional academic needs of students, we have action steps. For example, creating things like mentor programs that involve the community and student-to-student mentoring. We have those here tonight who participate in Katahdin students mentoring and working with younger first grade students. And there's other examples of that kind of mentorship and the deep learning that comes as a result, and the community building that comes. 2B in our whole child focused strategic plan core belief is around ensuring a curriculum that maintains a balance between academic, social, and emotional needs of students. So Christine Hessler and her team think deeply about that. So what does it look like at the elementary level? And then we're going to hand it over to Beth. So elementary students are developmentally looking at things about who am I, a lot of initially egocentric, who am I? They're beginning to form a clearer sense of self and their goals. They work on goal setting. But developmentally, there really is still a lot of me, and then a who am I relative to my peers when I'm out at recess and in the classroom and sharing and all sorts of wonderful community building exercises. And so if we know that about elementary kids, what might that look like, let's just say, in the school? You'd see structured routines, such as hallway transitions, setting children up with standard operating procedures. What do I do when I'm stuck? What resources do I have in the classroom? How do I first, productive struggle, work through this problem on my own, but how can I get help if I need it? And so routines, practicing social awareness, communication, self-management. Let's hear from Beth Peavy and Becca Cole to talk a little about elementary school, what that might look like.
And I think in past presentations, we've discussed through our goals some of the work that we're doing in our elementary schools. So for social thinking, that's really, in the past, many of our services that we were providing were, in the instruction, was for our students in special education. But as we were looking at you know, the social thinking, zones of regulation training and instruction they were doing with students, we found that it's really beneficial to do it at the tier 1 level, which is all students having that instruction and from the classroom teachers. So one of the ways we've done that is through social thinking. So we use mentor texts. It gives stories about social situations that exhibit like flexible thinking, problem solving, because when you're young, perspective thinking is different from student to student. What we would think that their perspective would be might be very different than how they're internalizing the situation around them. So we help them to think about those situations by using consistent language, and that's what we found what we needed to do at the tier 1 level across the board, using words like expected and unexpected. In the past, we used to say inappropriate and appropriate. So that takes away a little bit of that self-conscious feeling when you're saying you're not being inappropriate, when you're being inappropriate, versus is that expected behavior? And students can reflect on that more easily than thinking they're doing something wrong. We also discussed like group plan. Are you following the group plan? So that's really teamwork. Let's look around our classroom, what's expected. That's our rules that we're following in the classroom. So what we found is that when we are providing this instruction at the beginning of the year, and I think every school is doing that to start the school year with students, when other adults that are not necessarily in the classroom, we have the same language we're using with students. So it's consistent, and that's really important to help students develop that change and understanding. Responsive practices, I know we've discussed that a little bit in the past, and really restorative practices, but in the past we also had responsive classroom, where you had your morning meeting, you had your consistent standard operating procedures, and now we're adding the restorative practices where during our morning meetings, students have their talking piece. They are the only one that should be sharing. It gives them their ability to have voice. And so when there are concerns in the classroom, the teachers can have students come together and in a circle be able to problem solve what might be going on in the classroom, and the children, the students, help in setting what the issues may be, problem solving, and then coming back and seeing if it's working. Beyond that, if the behaviors increase or there's conflict between students, because we never have any of those in schools, they may come and just work with another adult or an administrator, and some of that is just what happened, giving each child an opportunity to voice what happened while the other student is listening, or the group of students are listening. So part of in the classroom, having the talking piece allows them to learn to listen and know that whoever has that item in their hand is the one speaking and the others are listening, so that transfers into more complex conversations that you have with students. So in a situation that was explained is, when we're dealing with conflict, it's their perspective, right? What happened? And so then we work through the different perspectives. How did each person feel? And then it's, how are we going to resolve this? How are we going to move forward? How are we going to fix the harm that was maybe caused? And in the past, we used to always have children just say sorry and kind of move on. What we're really looking for is change in behavior. So what is the change that we will see? That's going to exhibit the sorry. And, so taking ownership of your actions is really important, not an easy lesson when you're a child, but I think the more we have conversation with kids, having them relate to their feelings and emotions and taking on perspectives of others and their feelings and trying to conflict resolution in the long run will help for when they're in their jobs in the future. We also have positive behavior intervention supports. Rebecca, do you want to add anything as I'm talking away? Yeah. So positive behavior intervention supports, that's really that clear school-wide norms and expectations in your different settings in the school, which is really important, so that, again, across the school, we're using the same language, same expectations. You know, what is your voice level in the hallway? What is your voice level in the cafeteria? What are the rules out at recess? What does it look like when you're in assembly? And those are your school-wide norms. Different schools celebrate in different ways. So for RES, students earn tokens if they're following their iCare rules. They get a little ticket that they get to take home. But when we fill a jar, we have a celebration as a school. But every school celebrates how students are excelling in different ways. We use stars. We announce them in the morning. Rebecca can probably speak to WPS and how they're acknowledging students there. Other examples are, we look at calming strategies. One thing that people often do is they clench their teeth. They don't realize they stop breathing when they're stressed. And we try to teach students, different breathing strategies that just help us to recenter and, just calm our body and be ready to take on and push on to whatever challenges are before them. It also helps with students that become dysregulated. If they're at a place where you can get them to breathe, sometimes that will bring them right down. Let's do a rainbow breathing, let's do 5-finger breathing, a belly breathing. It distracts them from what their concern is or what's making them sad at that time. Different schools have different peer leadership opportunities. RES has 3rd and 4th graders that work with the younger students, and Becca could speak to WPS. Social skills groups are happening, for students that maybe at the tier 1 level needs more interventions in those areas. And so we have like a breakfast club at our school that works on those social skills. And then I have to say our guidance and our social workers are key in the SEL aspect. They provide lessons in the classroom. You can go to the RSU 14 curriculum guides for each school, each grade level, and you can pull up the different lessons that they are doing in our schools, topics. It's pretty transparent, so I advise and suggest people visit those sites. But without them, it's very busy in the school. They're like my right arm. I'm sure they are at WPS in Manchester, because they help students that are struggling from day to day, and it changes. And sometimes they need to meet with someone, process what's going on before they can actually step into the classroom and access their education.
I won't read it to you, although I would really, really love to, because it's one of my favorite things to do as an educator. But to inspire me tonight, I did bring a copy of a text that I use in my classroom as part of our way of connecting with each other called One. And I brought it because it was given to me by someone who is a dear friend to me, and I know many of the people who may be here listening, Janie Cummings. I also wanted to say that as a classroom teacher who understands the importance of the social and emotional aspect of my day with my students, I have a lot of feelings about this notion that I hear in the community, in the nation, that somehow this piece is fluff or is distracting from academics. We need to get back to basics. I absolutely want my students to be prepared to go into the workforce or to go on to post-secondary education, to become a functioning member of society. But I cannot, even with the brightest, best curriculum that's research-based and data-driven, and I've got all of the manipulatives and exciting experiences, I can't help that kid move past something that is more on their mind in a moment than learning how to add or learning how to do any of the skills that I want to teach them. If they're struggling with some kind of a trauma or some experience outside of their school day that they are really having a hard time processing, if they are having a hard time building relationships, they can't engage with curriculum. They can't. And so part of my job is to help them see that we care. There's a quote, I'm going to butcher it, but about how people aren't going to remember what you said or what you did, but they'll remember how you made them feel. Think about the best teacher you or a child that you know has ever had. And I bet that that's one of the things that made them one of the best teachers they ever had. And so all of these pieces are so important in creating a community where a child feels that they belong, where they feel valued, where they understand that I'm there to help them as their teacher, as their educator, as another adult who wants them to be successful. And then we can approach the learning piece. Just acknowledging sometimes, you know what, I hear that that's really hard for you. Letting them have an audience for whatever it is they're going through. Then they can move on and we can engage in the lesson and we can do the learning and they can enjoy the success. Because what happens sometimes is they could learn the skill, but they can't celebrate it if they're still thinking about and processing and trying to come to grips with something that has happened to them. So I would encourage all of us as we move through the curriculum updates that we're hearing now and that we will be hearing, and as we learn more about what SEL actually is, that we don't think of one as being a priority over the other, because they require both mindsets.
So let's move to middle school. Middle school students, so we talked about elementary students and where they are developmentally, typically. Middle school students are, a lot of people wonder, middle school teachers. I loved teaching middle school, I did. I taught middle school for 8 years before I taught high school. I love middle schoolers. They have a wonderful energy. They're learning to navigate group dynamics and resolve conflicts. We know that about middle schoolers. That's the bullet I want to highlight for you. So what does that look like? Let's head over to the right. In the classroom, that might look like students building on their interests or their desire to connect with peer groups and real life experiences. So this is where that conversation around project-based learning, or another acronym, PBL, or community service, community outreach. So we're moving beyond that egocentric to, now I'm thinking not just about who am I and who am I relative to my students in my classroom, but now who am I relative to my larger community or the world, and how can I take my interests and then give back to my larger community. So let's hear from Sue Austin about middle level SEL.
Thank you. So at the middle school, in the 6th grade, we are primarily focusing on discussing the differences between the roles of a child and the roles of an adult. So from 6th grade until about the age of 21. And what does that look like over time? What skills do you need? What do you need to understand to come into adulthood in the most healthy way that you can? We also have Stop, Think, and Choose, which is learning the importance of thinking before you speak, and really, really focusing in on, before you speak, is it thoughtful? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? And I would add to that, that also teaching that what you think doesn't always have to be what you say. So really sitting back and listening to hear and reflecting before you feel the need to speak. In the 7th grade, we talk about being an upstander, and this involves being able to discuss bullying and harassment and negative situations and behaviors where we really want kids to stand up and intervene in very appropriate ways. So if you see something or you see someone who is being harassed or being put down or being teased or bullied, we want you to have the skills to be able to speak up with kindness, but to speak up and be able to help that person. And this involves understanding empathy and what assertiveness looks like, and being able to do the right thing. Because as an adult, that becomes very important. It's important to know how to do the right thing, and the younger we learn that, the more successful we're going to be, even when things are uncomfortable and when they're unpopular. So this really hones in on being able to teach kids that we're not always going to agree about everything, but being able to sit with someone and have a difference of opinion, but being able to respect where they're coming from without name calling and unkindness is very important. So that leads into understanding empathy, having coping skills, resiliency, and communication. What does empathy look like and feel like and sound like? And being able to understand communication styles. What's the difference between passive communicators, aggressive communication, and passive-aggressive communication? And being able to discuss coping skills that are negative and coping skills that are neutral, and coping skills that are positive. And among those, where do we grow? How do we use them to help us grow? And then in the 8th grade, we're looking forward to high school, and that is our school counselors, I think, do an amazing job of helping 8th grade students understand what the responsibilities of a high school student are, how to make that transition over to high school, helping them select courses and register and do all of the things to become a member of a 9th grade class, and developing their personal profiles to go. So that's kind of what we do. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. That was awesome. And Lyneve Davis, the school counselor at Jordan Small Middle School, couldn't be here tonight, but she prepared a couple examples for you from Jordan Small. A lot of words I'll try to just capture. She's highlighting the new advisory program at Jordan Small, and you probably have heard that term before. They met to work on this and had developed a framework and really wanted to work on what is the purpose of the Jordan Small advisory. So in bold there, you see their purpose is to give everyone a safe space to talk, share, listen, learn, to create a connected community, to solve problems, build relationships, and grow as good humans. And so that advisory, this gives you a snapshot of the work. The topics include respect for others, similar to what Sue just talked about, visioning future success, so that planning for the future, goal setting, short and long-term goals, acceptance, that bystander effect, similar work happening between the two middle schools, a great deal of collaboration going on there. And then she shared a sample lesson, being left out. And so advisors in all of the classrooms shared a video. You can check it out if you'd like. And then they had a follow-up series of questions that they discussed with their advisees. So what is the first thing you thought of as they watched this experience? And it's all students their age in the video. Can you share a time when you felt left out? So again, that empathy building and perspective taking is really critical. What worries you about helping someone who's being left out? Giving them an opportunity to really voice why that's uncomfortable at times. So let's move to high school. So high school students are, let's see, which bullet? What speaks to you? I don't know. Does anyone want to share up there? High school students, well, they certainly spend more time with peers, and they're developing more mature relationships. So the complexity is growing. They're gaining clarity about their life goals and how they want to contribute to the world. So how does SEL support that where high school students are? With community partners, we start to think about integrating SEL with service learning to increase student engagement and create real-world learning opportunities. So when you think about the Capstone project, that authentic real-world learning, student-inspired interest-based learning, a lot of outreach in our local and thinking maybe even about global community. So great projects. We've seen all kinds of examples, especially during those board student roundtable discussions. We learn a lot about what they're learning. So let's turn it over to Phil with the specifics at Windham High School.
So at Windham High School, we really focus a lot on, building culture and building community in our school. And so for us, one of the things that we, in our Building Achievement Council, which includes students, several years back now, we looked at, how do we do this? How do we work with our students, our staff, to really build the culture and community that we want kids and students want to come to, or in adults as well. So one of the things that we really addressed was our early release days for us at the high school were really disjointed, and we weren't having a lot of great attendance on those days. So we wanted to make this was an opportunity for us to really accentuate the good things that are going on in our schools. We use that as celebrations for us, and so we've got other things that go on within that. So you can see the first one for us is the pep rally. You'll see a couple pictures there from that this year where the staff are, I think, currently losing at the human foosball game that we had going on in the middle of the court. So a lot of fun. We had great attendance, some of the best attendance we've had in a long time this year. It was packed and crazy. Other things that we do service activities. We're planning some activities in December for our next half day around thankfulness and giving back to community. So that's really going to be the focus of the day. So we talk about, what does that mean to look out for others. It's a time of giving. It's a time of taking care of each other. There's a lot of needs, both to themselves, the community, their families. So we talk a lot about that. We'll work on healthy activities. That's Project ACES Day, which is all children exercising simultaneously. So that for us in May is a day where we just do all healthy activities. Where teachers will plan things from Foursquare. I think Mr. Howell was a great participant in Foursquare back in the day. So from that to walking, wiffle ball, knitting, just a variety of different activities that really try to engage kids and some different experiences that they may not necessarily get. And so it's a day to focus on themselves and some healthy choices. Other things that we do to engage our students, we've really focused on clubs and activities as that piece too. And you've heard, I think Lily talked a lot about different things that are going on, and she's a part of a lot of our clubs and activities and as a school leader. And so it's really, student voice is the biggest piece for us. So they really, we have a lot of offerings. We have a lot of great staff that support our students in this and provide opportunities for kids to get involved. Really getting into more of the nitty-gritty is the restorative practices piece for us. And so that's something that I've been a big advocate for in my role as an administrator in terms of school discipline is people make mistakes. It's what we do afterwards that really matters, and that's where this comes in. And so when a student makes a mistake or a teacher makes a mistake or I make a mistake for that matter, it's about repairing that relationship because that person will come back to the classroom the next day or in a couple days, and we want them to be ready to learn, the teacher be ready to welcome them back. And so there's been a lot of that work within us in terms of a discipline model, but also in just building culture. So in the last couple of years, our staff has gone through restorative practices training. We utilize the idea of restorative practices not only as just a way to build, and one example is developing classroom norms and expectations. Many of our teachers do that on day one. It's like, all right, we're going to work together to build out what does this classroom look like? What are the expectations we want to have? How do we want to hold each other accountable? And what are the rules going to be that we work and follow? Which has been great success because oftentimes teachers are like, hey, remember we talked about this back in September where we were going to not do, we weren't going to be on our phones, which is a whole separate issue. So a lot of stuff there that's really been great, but teachers have used the restorative practice to just introduce lessons, so to become a part of lesson building. What do you already know about Julius Caesar? Let's have a conversation in a circle, and they kind of have an opportunity to share information that they may know or may have heard. We focus on attendance, and that's been a big push to kind of get back. I know with COVID, things kind of fallen apart a little bit with attendance. So for us, in terms of administration and a lot of our SEL work has been about trying to make sure that we are doing attendance checks, really working to get kids engaged and families engaged in school. Attendance is up for us, which has been really good. So there's a lot of good things happening there. And then for us, really getting into more of the nitty-gritty is advisory and pride lessons. I think this year it's 11 or 12 times we have dedicated to advisory pride activities. And so for us, advisory and pride is the first 40 minutes of our school day. So from 7:25 to 8:05, we break off these 12 occasions and we do different things. Like one of the first activities was kind of a letter to self, kind of reflecting on who you are, what are your goals, what do you want to get out of this school year, and then at the end of the year we'll kind of circle back to that. We'll give them the letters back like, hey, did you meet your goals? How did things work out for you? Other pieces we've done tech tips like how to send an email, how do you don't type the whole thing in the subject line, when you want to get help from a teacher, right? So different things. So just to work on these little skills that help them. Time management. We did an activity on reflecting on your habits of work. You've got a 70. What could you have done differently to get that grade up? Was your habits of work equal to that? So we've done a lot of reflective work, and that's, I think, for us is really at the high school level. It's kind of, they've kind of so many great activities that have helped build these students up. It's now really about like, all right, now you're not a finished product by any stretch, but you've got some really good skills. You've got some deficits. Figuring out where those are for you as an individual, because now you're looking to, and the piece I didn't list there is really that the college and career step is coming into play too. So there's a lot of activities around college and career prep for students, whether it be sophomore field trips, college career fair that we have. There's a lot of things for students that'll be coming up.
Thank you. So you can see, as I said earlier, we have district representatives that meet quarterly, and we share ideas like this. There's been a lot of collaboration. We've had staff who have done PD and training in one school, then be begged to come to another school to replicate that, because we have some real experts in this district for sure, and I know you know that. And so it's really just building on each other's strengths and sharing and collaborating and thinking deeply about how are we meeting the needs of every child every day? And if we're not, how can we support each other in that effort? So that's a glimpse into SEL, another acronym.
Questions? Go ahead, Joe.
So thank you all so much for the presentation. I think, SEL, as was pointed out by one of the speakers, has become this boogeyman in society. And frankly, I didn't know much about SEL as I was trying to learn, approaching this possibility of being on the school board. What I did see is in my own student coming home and this self-awareness about behaviors and feelings and how that's applied to his relationships with others, his relationship with his brother and things like that. And I finally put it together that really is a product of the SEL work that's going on. So I found that to be really interesting. I think there is probably opportunity in increasing public awareness about what SEL is. I think this presentation obviously is a great part of that. One of the other things that was interesting, again, as I was learning, was talking to a couple of high school students, and their statement was, oh, well, we don't have SEL in high school. So it was really interesting to hear, how that's applied. They have it, they know it's there, they just don't know it's that. So just an observation. I think this is good. I think, Maslow is right. You have to meet the other needs first, right? The one question I have is, some of the statistics about the success of SEL as a concept were cited at the beginning of the presentation, but within RSU 14, how is the RSU looking at the success of the SEL initiatives?
Great points. Thank you, Joe. And we were talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs as a team. I forgot to mention that, so thanks for referencing. A couple different ways, and on one of the slides, actually in our strategic plan, you'll notice that. Let me go back to that. We use the Maine Integrated Youth Health Survey and other assessments like looking at ACEs scores, children with high ACEs with trauma, or other data points that the schools might collect to get a sense of how children are doing or feeling about school, what progress they're making. So some of that reflection that Phil mentioned just now, where they kind of set goals at the beginning of the year and then they have opportunities to metacognitively reflect on their learning or reflect on progress or areas where they're still struggling. So those are those formative, that's happening all the time, but in a summative way, you might use a MIHAS survey, a tool. Christine, can you think of others outside of?
Christine also can just add, now we've gone to a yearly spring RSU 14 survey of students, staff, and community members, and so that would be another great way, because many of the questions really talk about students' attitudes and reflections and how they view their schools and how they view their teachers. Being able to look at that over a period of time will also give us some great data, how our students feel about our schools.
Yeah, great example. So that's another part of the strategic plan, and that started last year. So we'll have that baseline and be looking at, are we making progress as a result of all this hard work and instruction?
Go ahead, Mike.
You might have answered my questions already, but I'm going to ask him anyway, just so I make sure I'm understanding. So when did SEL become a focus of what we're doing? Can you answer that?
I can't. I've been here 5 years, Mike. In my time in education, I think it's always been a focus, even reflecting back, as I mentioned earlier, that I think we've all seen elements of this in our schooling all along. Goal setting and clear and effective communication and problem solving and collaboration are elements. So I don't know the origin of somebody giving it an acronym title as we now know it as SEL. I can't point back to that. Anyone in the district, it's been going on a long time.
Sorry. I can speak to the origin of it, but I know it. Back as far as 2001, we were building activities for advisories around these activities, around SEL-related activities.
I mean, I don't know for the district, but I think, in all honesty, a lot of SEL stems from Fred Rogers and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. And if you really study and understand what he was trying to accomplish, he is the basis for SEL. So I just had to throw that out.
Those are all great answers, and maybe kind of answers Joe's comment about people not understanding this. But as you were, Christine, as you were saying some of those words, I'm married to an educator, those are words I've heard for my whole life. And maybe I didn't realize they were called SEL. So that's really helpful. And you might have answered this also already, but throughout in the packet and then throughout most of your presentation, you cited the data suggests this is working. And I just wanted to see, is that national data, or are you talking about RSU 14 data?
So the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, that national organization, pulls from hundreds of studies and over 1 million students globally. Okay. We'd have to laser in on any one specific study. So it's a compilation of many.
Got it. Thank you.
I just was going to ask about student feedback, so thanks for bringing up the survey, Mr. Howell. I'm interested, and this might be on Mars, but the effect on expulsion over time in the areas that are not related to, obviously outside of behavior. That's just an idea. It might we not be able to connect the two ideas, but it's just something I had in my mind, because it seems like a long game, and as we work at the elementary school level, specifically with restorative practices, and integrate it at a level that all students have access to, I have to think that over time we're going to see the behavioral piece of that come into play in the district. And the last thing I had was just a comment. I'd like to just better understand, having shared a little bit of time in some classrooms in RSU 14, I'd like to understand what resources from each of the administrators that they would need to execute this more effectively. It's got to be a time monster inside the classroom to work through some of these things, and I have to think that with us as a goal, really looking at academic achievement, the two being intertwined, that
if there is an opportunity for us to hear about resources that can help support the academic achievement while it's wrapped up inside of these pieces that do take so much time to process, I would like to hear about that as we go into this year's budget.
Yes, and I can't say enough, Jody, about our school psychologists, social workers, school counselors. As noted earlier, they are instrumental in supporting our schools and our kids and our families with all of these pieces we've spoken about. Anyone want to say anything else?
I don't know if I'm addressing what you're saying, but I think at the beginning of the year, there's a lot of front loading. It's that first 6 weeks of school, especially at the elementary level, setting those expectations, those systems in place, students knowing who they can go to. But then I think in the course of the day, throughout the year, it's embedded in their instruction. So, you're having your students come to the circle area, they're a little not settled, let's take a moment, let's do a little breathing exercise so that we can calm our glitter and get ready for, I call it calm the glitter. You shake a bottle with glitter, you're gonna watch it go down. That's what our brains need to do. We need to just settle it all in, be ready for learning. We do that in the morning with our announcements. Mrs. Bartholomew was always doing an uplifting announcement in the morning, highlighting this was Kindness Week, like what does that look like? What does it feel like in the school to be kind? Let's think about our what we say. So it's embedded, so it shouldn't take all that much time. It does at the beginning of the year, but then I think throughout your lessons and what you're doing every day, it's embedded. Does that answer a little bit of your question? And maybe Rebecca can add a little bit more if you'd like.
I was just more thinking about the work of some of those support teams. So whether it's in nursing, we talked about dysregulation, those are obviously some safety situations, talking about the social work piece of it, and some of those resources that have a tangible impact on that, half-time, full-time equivalent, et cetera. Anything that we would consider around this topic going into the year.
I just want to say nursing is /counselor. Yes.
I think the other piece I want to point out, and Jody, thank you for bringing that up, is I think we do such a great job and our kids feel connected that they learn to feel like I'm frustrated, I'm upset, but I have someone to go to. And so I look at Sue, I look at Phil, the work that they're doing constantly all day long. I think it's a huge testament that our kids lean on our adults because they know that they care about them. And they don't feel like I can't ask for help. I'm struggling, I don't know why, but I have somebody that I can talk to about. And I think that that's huge and it's key and it's not in all places. I mean, I'm very fortunate to be here, but that's one big thing that I find is our kids will say to you, you know what, I really messed up or I'm really in a bad space, but I know I can go down and I'm gonna talk and Mrs. Austin's gonna sit with me and I'm gonna be okay. And they can articulate that as they move up. I was really frustrated today with my teacher. I was really angry and she told me, I'm gonna take a moment, you take a moment. And then I went over and we talked. So those are the things that you can't quantify. Those are the things we can't see in a test score. But I think some of us that get to travel to buildings all the time see that work. And it's our kids trust our adults, which we're really fortunate about.
Yeah, I think I can't say enough about how our kids feel safe and welcome at school so much. They feel it's the safest place for them to come to. And I'm sometimes the bad guy. And I'm the first guy that when they get off the bus, they see me, they come in, they say hi, and they talk to me about like, hey, listen, this just happened. Do you have time today? Yeah, of course. So we have amazing support between our school counseling team, our social workers, our nurse. We're blessed at the high school to have such a strong group that communicates well. They work with Sue so much on stuff. And so for us, I know just our kids feel so welcome and safe here, which is really great. And they really access their resources a lot. And so I thank you for the support and asking for that.
So just a couple of things. I've been sitting here kind of reminiscing back to when Jenny and I were in this school 35 years ago, and how kids today, their learning experience is so different than it was then, and kind of tying in with what, Joe, with what you said about how people make assumptions about things they don't know, they don't understand, and we've been in such a contentious environment for the last several years that it's easy to assume that, quote unquote, the other side is doing something bad, right? So, Rebecca, when you said, the first thing you need to do before you can teach math is to make sure the kids' heads are in the right places. And kids today have a ton more issues than when Jenny and I were in the school 35 years ago. And, well, she was 10 when she was here 35 years ago, so, yeah. And I think that it's easy as someone on the outside looking in to reference their school time and think, how could it be any different? Well, hello, have you looked at social media lately, right? Everybody's so connected that there's never a break from anything. And that right there is going to create a problem. Because kids are highly emotional, highly reactive, and just being connected 24/7 and getting addicted to instantaneous response, and how they move forward from that instantaneous response, whatever it may be. And frankly, it's unfortunate that kids today don't have the chance to grow up in an environment that I did 35 years ago. So with all that being said, I'm thinking about what can we do as far as education for the public and for folks that are maybe suspicious of SEL. And I was talking to Chris before this meeting of asking to have a presentation from the social workers and counselors to talk about what kinds of issues the kids today come to school with. Because I have a feeling that a lot of us are pretty ignorant about what some kids go through on a day-to-day basis. I know certainly in my 2+ years now on the board that my eyes have been opened tremendously. And just going through the expulsion process for kids, I was pleasantly, happily ignorant of what some other kids are going through, and I think of a lot of adults are, even if they're sympathetic to the SEL program, I don't really think that they understand what a lot of kids have to deal with today. And so, all of that being said, have you thought about, or is it part of the plan to educate kids' homes in the SEL process and maybe do some parental caregiver education and how they can instill these practices in their home lives, so it's more consistent for kids, because consistency especially for young kids is important, but also make them better caregivers, make them better parents, and heck, they could use some of these breathing exercises themselves, right? So I'm just wondering about that.
Yeah, so we have Title I nights, I'm hearing over here. That's a great example of schools bringing community together and doing all kinds of education during those nights, those open house events. Anytime we can get families in, sometimes food helps. Title I night with food was great. When you get that great turnout, there's an opportunity to build those relationships and try to unpack what something like SEL means, what it looks like in schools. Teachers do a phenomenal job of communicating with families, and I am sure it's woven into their lesson explanations and the work they're doing, school counselors and social workers and websites and administrators. So I think there's ways through Parent Square that we can get the message out. But I think starting here tonight to unpack what that acronym means, I think there's more to come, Shar. It's a great point.
Question, comment, clarification, and Phil, you might be able to help with this. If I remember correctly, after I'm wearing my teacher hat from Wyndham High School, when we opened the new building and everything was finished, we started our homeroom advisories. And so that 2005, 6-ish, somewhere around there. And the focus was to have a group of students have a single teacher for the 4 years that they were in high school to be able to provide we did some lessons, whether it be course selection or all kinds of other things, but it wasn't anything officially called SEL at the time, but that's what I remember from what we did. Sound about right?
Yeah, and it goes back even a little bit further than that, because 2001, 2002, when I was assistant principal, I was tasked with creating lessons and helping start to build that. So yeah, so it goes back that. And I think, just kind of add on to some of that is kind of what Shara had mentioned. I think the community looks at the schools as a resource to support their kids. So my day in, day out is often in that communication with families is, my son, my daughter, whatever, they need connection to a counselor, or they need connection to, whatever it may be. We work with those families because we fortunately can get them access to resources quicker than they can find in the community. So there's a lot of conversation, one-to-one conversations, but not big conversations. So I think that's a good point.
Anyone else? I just wanted to thank the SEL team for putting this together. It was really important information, as a couple of us highlighted. This is a conversation that's happening in our culture, so I think it armed us with some really important information. I'm sure it's going to come up again during budget, so hopefully we'll be able to clarify maybe some lacking information if we run across it in the community. I just especially like that you highlighted at each grade level, this is what we're doing. I think that's really important. So thank you.
Thank you all.
Next up, item 13, RSU 14 middle school election referendum results. May I have a motion, please?
I move that the computation and declaration of votes dated November 7, 2023, and attached hereto be approved. Further, that the computation and declaration of votes be entered upon the records of Regional School Unit 14, the regional school unit. Further, a certified copy of the computation and declaration of votes be sent to each of the municipal clerks within the regional school unit.
Second.
Thank you. Public comment on the motion? Seeing none, board discussion? Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you. I figured to hold my thoughts on this to now as opposed to doing it earlier at the board roundtable. So, I live in Raymond, and sadly I'm from New York, and when I moved to Raymond, I discovered this thing called the town meeting, and I fell in love with it, and it was just so great. You'd go to the town meeting, and there'd be this budget for the school. No one would ask a question, and then they'd argue about who's going to mow the cemetery for $10 an hour. And I just fell in love with that. And I think it caused me to get involved in schools with volunteering, running for office, coaching teams, getting really involved. And I think, at least for me, in Raymond, that was not abnormal. A lot of people lived that life where they coached and they did things, as long as their kids were around. And so I'm definitely not trying to be judgmental tonight, because I know there are other people that can't be as involved in that, but I really just want to speak to this thing I've heard around Raymond recently, and even tonight with these letters, that said this was not a fair process. I was added to the board around the time that the process was going. I replaced Janie Cummings, who sadly passed away. And so I jumped in the process. I was actually on the I think it's building committee, right? That was called building committee. So I was on the building committee. At first, I was the only Raymond person on that committee, because Raymond had got into it late, I guess. It was a very fair process. People that followed that process knew that I spoke loudly to try to get the school, the property in Raymond. And it didn't happen, and there was reasons for that, and I was disappointed, but also I'm an adult and I realized that was the case. And to be honest, I had been the chair of the board in Raymond when we got Raymond Elementary School. And other than an act of God, we couldn't find land. There just was no land anywhere. And then we happened to trip over something and it worked out and we got that beautiful building. So I just want to speak tonight that the process was a really fair process. It's a process that's dictated by the state. There's, Chris, 30 some odd steps to it. And there were times in that process, in the time period that I'm talking about, where Wyndham, Raymond, or anybody could have spoke up and it could have been ended. And it was very public. We used as Char said, we used every avenue we could think of, short of calling everybody or knocking on every door. We had public hearings where people didn't come. We used the newspapers. I could go on, and I'm not trying to be judgmental of people because I know people have jobs and all that. But the reality was it was a fair process. I also want to speak to, in the last couple of weeks, these tax signs showed up in Raymond. And I just want to say to the public, those signs were illegal. They were printed. When you put a sign on the road, you actually have to put who put the sign on, who owns that sign. And so they were illegal signs. And I think as Char and I've also spoken over time, I think the premise that Raymond's taxes were go up, maybe it was a good premise, but as Char and I have spoken many times, we had to think outside the box on this. There's, of course, now, there's also in 10 years when Jordan Small was going to be done. And then we were looking at Raymond having to do a whole school by itself. And we made the decision, and other people made the decision, that this was the better deal. And I'll stand behind that to the end. So having said all that, I just want to say that we can defend this. I can defend this process really well, and yet I woke up, or I guess before I went to bed even, that night about midnight. I couldn't believe. I was so surprised at the vote total. Not that I thought it might win or lose, but that it was such a big spread, and so I'm actually going to vote against this motion. And I'm going to do it just to be symbolic. I again want to say very clearly, I support this project. I voted for it on Election Day, and on. You've heard what I've said. And yet Raymond voted against this process, and it just messes with my mind. So I feel compelled to be a one vote against it. The next issue on the agenda is another vote for this project for funding, and I'm going to support that for sure. But I just wanted to state what I'm doing, why I'm doing it, and go from there, I guess.
Anyone else? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Item 14, may I have a motion, please?
I move that the resolution entitled Resolution to Authorize Issuance of $171,551,289 in general obligation boards to finance a $171,551,289 school construction project be adopted in form presented to this meeting, and that an attested copy of said resolution be filed with the minutes of this meeting.
Second.
Thank you. Public comment on the motion? Board discussion? Go ahead, Char.
So not to belabor the subject, but I do just feel terrible for the parents in Raymond that are wringing their hands over this situation, and agree wholeheartedly with what Mike said, and I'm going to vote for it. I voted for it as soon as I knew that Raymond was going to have to pay for it, whether or not we used it. And Mike made a good point, is that the building at Jordan Small was going to run out its useful life here pretty soon. And whether we raised it to build a new building or made it bigger or renovations, it was going to cost a lot more than this new middle school. So I really want to say again to whoever from Raymond is listening and watching that we will make it a priority to keep your kids safe. We will make it a priority to not have them on a bus for 3 hours a day, as some folks are saying that their kid was going to have to be on a bus. That will be a priority moving forward, and we will make it happen. Thank you.
Can I just mention for a minute exactly, just so the public knows exactly what the board's voting on right now? So what the board is voting on is the financing portion of what was approved by the voters last Tuesday. And in essence, what's going to entail is right up front, 2 interest-only bond anticipation notes. One in the amount of $8 million to be taken out in December and will be placed in an interest-bearing account at which we will be using to pay some of our upfront costs, including paying back the RSU for money that has been spent to date, which is roughly $1.1 million towards this project, so to be able to take that back. In April, we'll be looking to take out an $82 million bond anticipation note, and that is a note in which we invest, we slowly spend it down. The investment income actually matches what we are going to be paying in interest. And so, in essence, up until our first bond, we will have $82 million worth of cash flow to get our project moving without cost to taxpayers. And so all of that has been calculated out. We've been working with bond counsel and with our bond broker to make sure, and with our architect to make sure that we have the appropriate amount of cash. In May of 25, we'll take out our first bond of $127 million, which will be used to pay back those bond anticipation notes. The first interest-only payment for that will come in November of 26, so that's actually the first time it's going to hit our budget. In May of 26, we'll have a second interest payment on that exact same bond, and then the following November is when that bond will actually hit our budget. So that's bond 1. Bond 2, which will be $44.4 million, will be taken out in May of 26, and so in November of 26, that will have a first only interest payment. November will have first interest only, May interest only, and then November of 27 for board members, that's when the local only cost will hit the budget. Also, just a complete understanding for everybody is that throughout this process, we will be receiving additional state subsidy so that when we get to budget time and our budget jumps up in that year by $14.5 million, there'll also be $14.5 million of revenue coming in from the state of Maine to cover the expenses for the bond in which they hold. So tonight, board, what you're voting on is the ability now to start financing the project that was approved by the board and also approved by the voters. And we will keep the finance committee fully apprised as we go through to make sure that everyone knows exactly where we are. And so December 15th looks like to be our first closing on our first bond anticipation note.
We ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor? Okay, may I have a motion to enter into executive session?
I make a motion to approve going to executive session to consider the possible readmission of a student pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 4056B.
Second. All those in favor?
Strike, they go off on the stage to see if there's something catchy. Oops.
Or at least...
There might be a mute button on the side.
There we go.
Hello? I move to approve the student under consideration be readmitted to school and that the superintendent provides the parents with a written summary of the board's findings.
Second.
All those in favor? Opposed? Abstain? Thank you. Student is readmitted. May I have a motion, please? No, we have executive session.
I motion to enter into executive session to discuss the RSU 14 Emergency Operations Plan in pursuant to 1 MRSA subsection 405 6F and not return to regular meeting.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Wonderful. Good night.